Hello, it's Colette from the Sacred Rose Temple, and I'm here to speak about archetypes and complexes. The Jungian work I've been participating in over the last couple of years has really allowed me to develop a different vocabulary than the vocabulary I was using before. In that, when I was teaching people about the spiritual psychology and the spiritual being, there were certain words that weren't available to me to explain why certain behavior patterns were operating within someone. I'd studied systems like internal family systems within my somatic therapy studies and realized that there were like different parts of the personality that I had seen playing out in people's psyches, in people's behaviors, but had just a more defined way to help people connect to them and to see what they were doing. So when I started to teach chakra evolution about 4 or 5 years ago, I began to incorporate archetypal patterns after doing some work with Carolyn Mace into my work because they were so easy identifiable in people's behavior. So I just wanted to share really that, archetypes are thought to be a raw nature at the heart of your psyche. So they serve as foundational material for complexes. So I like to describe the archetypes as the umbrella. Obviously, in all of our collective consciousness, there are stories that have circulated all through time that come from Greek mythology, Roman mythology, our own cultural Irish, Celtic, African mythology. So all of our own stories are incorporated into our own cultural perspective. There is always these characters in them. There's the king and the queen, there's the princess, there's the jester, there's the shaman, the healer, the medicine woman, the witch, the goodie, the baddie, and we could go on and on and on. But there are a collection of characters, let's call them archetypes characters, that appear in the collective mythos, in the collective story. And they appear in all our movies, in all our children's books, in all our soap operas. And these characters exist because they are us. We all are these archetypes. We have these archetypes in us. And so they are projected back at us through story, through film, through, myths, so that we can observe ourselves better to see how these characters are playing out in our own personality. So we have these umbrella characters that, like I've just said, queen, jester, king. And then deeper in your own psyche is a complex. And a complex has a physical response in the body. A complex is part of your personality that embodies characteristics of that archetype. So, for example, I was working with my gypsy archetype, and that complex in me, she's called Gypsy Rose, and she has a wanderlust, and she wants to not really ever settle down. She likes adventure. She likes to travel. She likes the outdoors. She likes to collect herbs. She's got a certain way that she lives within me. And, there are certain positive attributes of Gypsy Rose within me. But there are also negative attributes of Gypsy Rose in me. That wanderlust never really lets me settle. There is the outlawed part of the gypsy that lives in me that feels separate from people in society. There's the part of me that feels, rejected by society. There's the part of me that feels my own belief system structure doesn't sit well within the main part of society. There is a wildness in her that never settles down. So when we are able to understand parts of our personalities, and the archetypes are the basic way, so we can basically start with the archetype and then try to find the complex within us. But a complex is very reactory. So I know that a complex comes into place when I begin to act. So like Ivy the Terrible is another one of my complexes, is a small grumpy child that is normally stamping her feet, normally saying to people, see me, hear me, stop ignoring me. And this part of me, labeled, helps me understand her, where she was developed. Usually, as Jung would say, the complexes go back to early childhood. And then how that came about, what made that behavior, and then how I can nurture that behavior, understand that behavior in me, and just supervise it really so that it doesn't cause me problems. And over the last few years, I've been developing archetypal transmissions. I've done things like the mother, maiden, and the crone, how those archetypes work within a woman's psyche. I've done the sage, the queen, and the lover, how those archetypes work within us. And all the feedback that I ever get from people when they do the transmissions is that it's really helped them understand themselves, their behavior, and the behavior of other people. So it enters into like more of an understanding of each other, less of a judgment of each other. When we see bad behavior in someone, we can understand that part of their psyche is acting out through a complex, and that complex was created because of some disruption earlier on in their life. This is empowering work. It's deep work. It's triggering work. It's rich work. And anyone who's on a path of seeking to know themselves is, it's really important to look at you and yourself and know yourself. When I studied Eastern philosophy, we used to call this self-realization, realizing the self, knowing the self, understanding the self. Jung would call this individuation, in that you're beginning to start an enlightening process, a process of knowing yourself. The enlightened masters were normal human beings who began to know themselves. They realized themselves completely and then were able to transform into the steps that then enlightenment, self-realization, individuation took them on. And again, starting again on another plane, The self-work is never ending. The ultimate healed state that we all look for doesn't really exist. And I'm sure it does out there somewhere in the realms, but we're all having a human experience, and therefore the human experience is to heal our suffering. And I really believe that doing the archetypal, complex work with someone that is able to, has embodied it and gone through it and knows how their complexes play out, and can help you identify how your complexes play out through your life, is really rich work. And it is part of my offerings. I do 6 sessions where I work with archetypes, specific focus on archetypes, specific focus on complexes, and how you are able to work on them. So the session will bring things through, and then after the session, you're given an application to take further so that you can really get to know this person in you, this personality in you, and begin to be able to nurture it and not have it possess you at times, which is the ultimate goal of knowing complex within yourself, is that it no longer possesses you and takes over your personality. And I think we could all, agree that that's happened to us all at some point, where we've been completely possessed by certain behaviors and they have taken us over. So I hope that helps you understand a little about the archetypal and complex work that you would do on an individuation process. And if you feel drawn to work with this, then I am really happy to work with people on the process, because it's absolutely enthralling, magical, enlightening, and very transformative work. I'm wishing you all a beautiful day. May you hold your archetypes in love.